Okay, so you know how sometimes you just wonder, like, what really happens if you're using a bong every day? Like, is it really a big deal? You get all sorts of different opinions, right? Some people are all about it, and some people are like, whoa, slow down.
Right.
So we're diving deep today into your sources to really get a good picture of what's actually going on when you're using a bong on the daily.
Right.
Just to try to lay it all out in a way that makes sense,
Yeah.
we're going to hit everything like, how it affects your body, what the risks might be, if it's any safer than other ways to use cannabis,
Hmm.
tolerance and becoming dependent, tips to make it less harmful if you're going to do it,
Right.
and how to know if maybe you need to take a break.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. When you start to peel back the layers of this, because you have that immediate experience, right? It feels smooth.
Right.
And people often sort of attribute that to the water filtration.
Totally.
But when we step back and look at the bigger picture, we have to consider what happens anytime we're inhaling burnt plant matter regularly.
Okay, so let's start there then with the basics.
Yeah.
What's actually happening in your body when you're using a bong every single day? Your sources talk about that smoothness, like you said, and that it feels easier on your throat. But then they jump right in to how that repeated inhalation of that burnt plant matter, even if it's cooled down, is affecting your respiratory system.
Exactly. And, it's interesting because some people report feeling more relaxed, maybe more focused with daily use, and then others start noticing things like, oh, I'm feeling a bit more tired. Or maybe they develop a bit of a cough.
Hmm.
And it really highlights that kind of like a balancing act we do between the effects we want and then what might be happening internally, long term.
So let's talk about that then when we talk about breathing, because that seems to be the main thing here.
Yep.
Even though that water's cooling down the smoke when you're hitting it every day, those lungs are getting hit with that heat constantly.
Right.
And your sources talk about things like developing a persistent cough and increased mucus. And they even say just basic stuff like staying really well hydrated, keeping your bong super clean,
Yeah.
and even just like paying attention to your breathing can maybe help with some of that.
It's interesting, too, because you're right. That water does cool things down, and that can make it feel gentler on your throat than, say, just hitting a dry pipe.
Right.
But when we think long term, that tar and that heat are still making their way down into your lungs.
Right. And they make a specific point that whenever you're inhaling smoke regularly, it can irritate your airways. So the water in a bong, it might trap some of the bigger stuff, but all those really fine particles, they're still getting through.
Right.
So you might start to wheeze more, or you start coughing more. Maybe you just have a scratchy throat all the time.
Yeah.
And they even suggest that if that's happening, you might want to cut back or think about something else like a vaporizer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is something that might not occur to people right away, but it makes sense. You know how some people will use a bong every day to unwind? But your sources point out that heavy use can sometimes lead to just feeling sluggish or unmotivated.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see how that can affect everything, like getting things done, working out, even how much you're socializing.
Absolutely, that ripple effect.
Right.
And I think this next one's really important, and it might not be top of mind for everyone. Clean bong water.
Oh, yeah.
We got to stress this.
Right.
Dirty bong water, it can turn into a breeding ground for all sorts of nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Bacteria, fungi. You don't want that.
Ugh, yeah.
That can lead to infections and all sorts of problems. The advice is simple. Fresh water every single time.
Makes sense.
Think of it this way.
Yeah.
You wouldn't keep drinking out of the same dirty coffee mug day after day, would you?
No.
Same goes for your bong. Keep it clean. It's going to be a better experience.
Okay, so that's what's going on in the body, but then the big question, right? Are there actual health risks to using a bong every single day?
Right. And the short answer is yes, there are.
Okay, well, let's get into that then.
Because even though you have that water filtration, you're still inhaling smoke.
Right.
And it still has tar and other chemicals.
So we're back to those breathing issues again?
Exactly. Wheezing, coughing, irritation in those bronchial passages.
Okay.
And, it's really important to listen to your body. If you're experiencing these things, maybe take a break. Give your lungs a chance to chill out a bit.
Okay.
And there's another piece to this too, right? We know cannabis has benefits. It can help with relaxation. Some people use it for pain management. But we have to weigh those benefits against the risks of overuse.
So let's talk about those respiratory concerns a bit more.
Okay, so when you burn any plant material, it creates these byproducts.
Mm-hmm.
And constantly inhaling that smoke through a bong, it can make you more susceptible to things like bronchitis.
Okay.
And remember, that water, it helps, but it's not a magical solution. It doesn't eliminate all the harm.
Hmm.
And you might find over time that you become more sensitive to other things in the air that can irritate your lungs.
Hmm. Interesting.
And this might not be something everyone thinks about, but your mental state can be affected too.
Yeah. Okay, let's go there.
Some people use cannabis every day to deal with stress, right?
Right.
But especially with strains that are high in THC, sometimes it can actually make anxiety or paranoia worse.
Oh, wow.
And so in those cases, it might be worth cutting back or trying a strain with lower THC if you're finding that you're feeling uneasy.
And if we're talking about how this all fits into your life,
Yeah.
daily bong use can just become a habit, a routine.
Easy to fall into that.
Right, and your sources talk about how it might start to interfere with other stuff you need to do, like maybe you're too tired to exercise or you can't focus at work.
Right. It can have that kind of creeping effect on your overall well-being.
And it's important to remember that not everyone who uses a bong every day is going to have all these issues. Everyone's different, right? Absolutely.
Your body chemistry, the type of cannabis you're using, even your environment plays a role. But the big takeaway is that just being aware of these risks can help you make better choices for yourself.
For sure. Now, I think a lot of people wonder, is using a bong actually safer than other ways of smoking?
Right, because there's this idea that it's healthier because the smoke feels smoother.
Exactly. And it's important to address that.
So do your sources say anything about that?
Yeah, they do. They're pretty clear that while bongs might feel smoother than something like a dry pipe, it doesn't get rid of all the risks.
So you're still getting the bad stuff.
Yeah, you're still getting tar, carbon monoxide, all those chemical byproducts.
Hmm.
So it might be gentler on your throat, but you're still inhaling burnt plant material.
Okay.
And that comes with its own set of considerations. There's this idea that the water filters everything out, and your sources call that the filtration myth.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people think that water is like this magic purifier, but it's more of a partial filter.
It catches the big stuff, but the fine particles, including the tar from the burnt cannabis, can still get through.
So it's more about how it's delivered then.
You could say that. Yeah, it's a gentler delivery, but the fundamental risks are still there.
Interesting.
Your sources also compare bongs to other methods. Like with joints, you're getting direct inhalation, no filter.
Right.
Vaporizers, on the other hand, heat the cannabis at a lower temperature, so potentially fewer harmful byproducts.
Uh-huh.
And then there's bongs, which cool the smoke and filter out some of those bigger particles.
So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway there?
Well, the bottom line is that even though a bong might be easier on your throat, daily use still means you're exposing your lungs to stress over and over.
So it's not risk-free?
Nope.
Yeah.
But for people who do use bongs, your sources recommend some things to at least try to lessen the impact.
Oh, like what?
Well, cleaning it regularly is huge.
Yeah.
Don't use super hot water because that can damage your bong, and change the water every time you use it. It's not going to eliminate the risks completely,
Yeah.
but it can help.
Okay, so that's harm reduction.
Exactly.
And I think we need to talk about tolerance and dependence.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because those things can really change how you use cannabis over time.
For sure. And daily bong use, it can definitely lead to increased tolerance, meaning you need more cannabis to get the same effect.
Right, right.
And then as your tolerance increases, that can make you more dependent.
So your body gets used to having it.
Exactly. So if you're using it every day and then you suddenly stop, you might not feel so great.
And your sources are saying that taking breaks can help with that.
Absolutely. It's one of the key ways to manage tolerance and prevent that dependence.
So how does tolerance work? Like what's actually happening in the body?
Well, it's all about your body adapting to the cannabinoids in cannabis.
Like THC.
Right. THC is the main one that gets you high. So as your body gets used to it, you need more and more to get the same effect.
Oh, I see.
And that unfortunately can accelerate the development of dependence.
And dependence, it's not just like mentally craving it, right? It can be physical too.
That's right. Your body's chemistry actually changes. And if you stop suddenly, you might get restless, moody. You might even have trouble sleeping. It doesn't happen to everyone, but it's something to watch out for.
So what can you do if you notice your tolerance is going up?
Well, your sources have some really good advice. One is to take tolerance breaks. Even a few days can help, or a week, maybe even longer.
Just to reset everything.
Yeah, give your body a chance to readjust. They also recommend switching up the strains you're using.
Okay.
Different strains have different cannabinoid profiles, so that can help too.
And being mindful about your use.
Absolutely. Ask yourself why you're using it. Is it a habit? Or are you getting a real benefit from it?
Right.
Maybe explore other ways to relax.
Okay, so let's talk about harm reduction. What can people do if they're going to use a bong often to try to minimize those potential harms?
Well, a big one is keeping everything super clean.
We talked about that, yeah.
Clean your bong often, change the water every day, and consider using strains with lower THC levels.
Okay.
Pay attention to your lungs. If you're coughing a lot
Right.
or you feel tightness in your chest, that's your body telling you something.
Right.
And stay hydrated. Daily use can be dehydrating.
And if we dig into that cleanliness thing a bit more,
Yeah.
your sources make a good point. A dirty bong can quickly turn something enjoyable into something unhealthy. That stale water, it can breed bacteria, and that residue in the bong, it just exposes you to more tar and impurities. They recommend cleaning it regularly with isopropyl alcohol and salt.
Just like washing your dishes.
Right.
You wouldn't eat off a dirty plate, would you?
No.
Same goes for your bong. Keep it clean.
And when it comes to choosing the right cannabis, your sources say it's smart to be informed. Like going for those lower THC strains or those strains that have a balance of CBD and THC.
Right, that can help to avoid feeling overwhelmed or anxious. And don't be afraid to mix it up. Try different strains. Keep things interesting. And it can help with tolerance, too.
And your sources talk about being mindful, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing why you're smoking.
Exactly. Set an intention. Are you doing it out of habit, or are you actually getting a benefit from it?
That's a good point.
They also recommend incorporating exercise and deep breathing into your routine to support your lung health.
Okay, so it's not just about the bong itself, it's about everything else you're doing.
Exactly. And they make an interesting point about the quality of your equipment.
Oh, okay.
They say that investing in a good quality glass bong can actually reduce hidden risks like cracks or leaks.
That makes sense.
And it's less likely to break during cleaning or when it's exposed to temperature changes. But no matter what kind of bong you have, always check it for wear and tear.
Okay, good advice.
Yeah.
And they also recommend keeping track of how much you're using.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but it can be really helpful.
Like a log.
Just jot down how often you smoke and how you're feeling afterward. It can help you spot patterns you might not notice otherwise.
Okay, so we've talked about harm reduction, but when should you actually consider taking a break from daily bong use?
Well, it's like anything, right? It can become part of your daily routine, like that first cup of coffee in the morning.
Totally.
But there are some signs to watch out for that might mean it's time for a break. If you're always tired or your mood's off or you're more anxious when you're not smoking,
Okay.
those are red flags. And of course, if your tolerance has gone way up and you need to use more and more to get the same effect, that's another sign.
And those breaks, even short ones, can be really helpful.
Absolutely. It's like hitting the reset button. It helps to maintain a healthy balance. And let's get specific about those signs. That cough that won't go away, especially if it's worse in the morning, that can mean your lungs need a break. If you're feeling more anxious or paranoid, that's another sign. And if your tolerance is going up fast and you need more and more cannabis, that's a classic indicator. And if you're just not motivated to do things, the things you normally enjoy, that could be a red flag too.
So you decide to take a break. What's the best way to do it?
Well, your sources suggest gradually reducing your use if you can.
So maybe taper off.
Right. It's often easier than quitting cold turkey. And find other things to do that you enjoy. Hobbies, exercise. Those can help fill the time and reduce cravings.
Okay.
And stay hydrated. It'll make you feel better overall. And it's really important to remember the benefits of taking a break.
Yeah, what are those?
Well, your tolerance can go back down, which means you'll enjoy it more when you start again. You might find new ways to relax and unwind, things you haven't done in a while. Reading, cooking, spending time with friends, all those things.
Right, so it's not a punishment.
Exactly. Think of it as a tune-up
I like that.
for your body and your mind.
Okay, so to sum it all up, it sounds like using a bong every day, it can be part of your routine, but it's not without its risks and considerations,
Right.
especially when we talk about your lung health, tolerance, and your overall well-being.
Yeah.
Being mindful about how you're using it, keeping your bong clean, taking breaks when you need to, those are all super important. And ultimately, if you have any concerns, it's always best to step back and just check in with yourself and put your health first.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah.
And, this all makes me wonder, with all the changes happening in the world of cannabis,
Yeah.
new ways to use it, new products coming out,
Yep.
it's worth reflecting on your own relationship with cannabis and these different methods. And the research, it's constantly evolving, so keep learning, keep exploring what works for you, and support your well-being.
Great advice. Well, that's our deep dive for today.
Until next time.